Long before Gore-Tex, long before synthetic insulation, and, long before modern survival gear was engineered in laboratories, there were people who had already solved the problem. They lived on the frozen edges of the world. The vast Siberian steppe, the wind-scoured coasts of Alaska, the birch forests above the Arctic Circle, and, well, they dressed in fish. Not metaphorically, literally. Salmon, pike, and carp skins, carefully stripped, smoked, and sewn into garments so technically sophisticated that modern material scientists are still studying their construction. This is the story of a forgotten fieldcraft so effective it kept entire civilizations alive for thousands of years, and what it can teach survivalists today about working with nature rather than against it. What made fish skin clothing so extraordinary wasn't just the material, it was the process. Indigenous craftspeople of the Amur River region, particularly the Nivka-Nanai peoples of Siberia, developed smoke tanning techniques that fundamentally transformed raw fish skin into something close to a technical fabric. When smoke penetrates wet skin during curing, the aldehydes present in the smoke chemically bond with the collagen fibers in the tissue, cross-linking them in a way that prevents stiffening, resists bacterial breakdown, and creates a naturally water-repellent surface. These hunters hadn't studied organic chemistry. They had observed, tested, and refined over generations. The result was a garment that remained pliable at temperatures that would make untreated leather crack like old bark. This matters enormously in a survival context. One of the most dangerous and underestimated threats in extreme cold isn't the temperature itself, it's rigidity. A shelter that cracks, a boot that stiffens, a jacket that loses its seal. Arctic hunters understood instinctively that survival gear must move with the body, breathe with the body, and endure repeated cycles of wet and freeze without structural failure. Fish skin did all three. Picture a hunter crouched at the edge of a frozen river, waiting motionless for hours in wet snow and biting spray. His outer layer is salmon skin, overlapping scales still partially intact on certain panels, oriented downward like roof shingles to shed water. The seams have been stitched with such precision, using split sinew thread that swells when wet and effectively self-seals, that almost no moisture penetrates from the outside. Meanwhile, the material breathes just enough that the sweat generated by exertion escapes gradually, preventing the deadly internal dampness that causes hypothermia from the inside out. This wasn't primitive improvisation. This was engineered performance clothing, developed through centuries of iterative fieldcraft in one of the harshest testing environments on Earth. Modern outdoor brands have spent billions of dollars trying to replicate exactly this balance, waterproof on the outside, breathable from within, and these hunters achieved it with nothing but a fish, a fire, and accumulated knowledge. What makes this tradition even more remarkable is its sustainability. Nothing was wasted. The fish fed the family. The bones became tools. The organs were rendered for oil used in lamps and leather conditioning. And the skin, the part most people discard, became the most critical piece of survival equipment a hunter owned. This was a closed-loop system of resource use that modern bushcraft practitioners talk about in theory, but rarely execute with this level of sophistication. Species selection mattered too. Salmon skin was prized for its strength-to-weight ratio and, its relative abundance during seasonal runs. Pike skin offered tougher, more abrasion-resistant panels, which were ideal for areas of high wear like knees and elbows. Carp provided larger sections that were really useful for outer garment construction. A single well-made fish skin coat might incorporate 4 or even 5 species, each selected for specific performance properties and positioned strategically within the garment's design. The lessons here cut straight to the heart of what Fieldcraft Chronicles is built on. The idea that the most sophisticated survival knowledge isn't always the newest. Sometimes the most powerful tools available to a modern bushcrafter are found not in a gear catalogue but in an ethnographic archive. The Nivch and Nanai peoples didn't survive the Siberian Arctic because they were lucky. They survived because they were brilliant, observant, and relentlessly practical about how they interacted with their environment. For today's survivalist, the actionable takeaway isn't necessarily to start sewing salmon suits, though honestly, if you're committed, the technique is learnable and the materials are accessible. The deeper lesson is about moisture management as a first principle of cold weather survival, about understanding the materials available in your environment at a molecular level, and about the compounding value of multi-generational knowledge that gets refined rather than discarded. Every technique in this episode was born from necessity, sharpened by repetition, and preserved by people who understood that knowledge is the most durable survival tool of all. The steppe hunters who first pressed a smoked salmon skin against the wind weren't thinking about history. They were thinking about tomorrow, about making it through one more season, about passing something useful down to the next generation. That instinct to learn, adapt, preserve, and share is exactly what this channel exists to honor. If this episode expanded how you think about survival materials, ancient fieldcraft, or the intelligence embedded in indigenous technologies, then share it with someone who needs to see it. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Fieldcraft Chronicles, now is the time. Every episode is built to give you something real, knowledge that sticks, history that moves, and skills that matter. Subscribe, share, and keep the fire burning.